Shalom Aleichem, everyone. How are you? This is the second installment of three stories from Bereishis and their meaning. The reason I wanted to describe it not just because I have a good idea about these stories, but because I feel that the vast majority of Jewish people, and certainly young Jewish people, look at the stories of Bereishis and say, there's nothing in this for me. There's no use. It's a silly fairy tale story. And my understanding of the story is that these are stories that contain some of the deepest concepts that apply to human beings, to understanding who we are, our spiritual psychology, and just trying to use these stories. We study these stories over and over again it's kind of like lifting weights at the gym. It is the learning Torah constantly is spiritual exercise, moral exercise. So these stories are more than just stories, and it's not just silly, but rather they're giving us some of the deepest tools for living properly. The second story, so this is part 2 out of 3, is the story of the trick of the snake in the garden. Now this one got to be the most strange out of the 3 stories I'm going to explain today. The idea that Adam and Eve were naked and they're happy and everything's going well. And then the snake comes and the snake says, oh, did God really say you shouldn't eat from that tree? Actually, he said, did God really say, it's interesting. Did God maybe say, don't eat of any tree in the garden? So you see, he's already tricking them, because he doesn't say, did God say you shouldn't eat of that specific tree? He says, of any tree. And Eve says, like, yeah, you're wrong. God said I could eat of any tree, just not that one. Oh, why not that one? Why not that one? So he's already being, this tricky snake, and he's talking about touching it, and he says, you could touch it. She says, if I touch it, I'll die. I guess it was an overreach, because God said, don't eat of it. Didn't say don't touch it. But anyways, the snake says, touch it, see what happens. And he pushes her against the tree. She doesn't die, convinces her to eat, and she eats this. She gives her husband, and somehow this causes the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Well, there's a ton to say about this story, and I'm not going to go into like levels of depth. I will just say that I think it's an incredibly important story, because it very clearly shows us one of the biggest challenges that we have, which is that of the Yetzer Hara. The snake is compared to the drive to do evil. We understand we have 2 drives, a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Tov is your drive to do what's right, what you know is right for yourself, for others, your moral side, your super ego, and the Yetzer Hara is the selfish drive, but really it's not selfish. That's where the key here is, because the snake tells Eve, God doesn't want you eating from that tree for a reason. God doesn't want you to get the power that will come from eating of that tree, the knowledge that will come from eating of that tree. And so what the Yetzer Hara does is pits us against God. Now, God is on our side. Anybody who understands, the most basic thing about God would understand God is our parent, our whatever way you want to think about it, whatever metaphor you want to use. Hashem wants us to succeed. We're here for a reason. So the idea that it's God versus us is so it's me versus God. God doesn't want me to enjoy life. That's why he says I can't eat this thing, or I can't do this illegal act, whatever it may be that you want to do, that you feel like, ugh, I can't do this because God's such a bummer. When really what you should be understanding, what you should be thinking is, thank God. God gave me direction how to live properly, how to do what's right, to eat the things, to act in a way that's right for me. But yet the Yetzer Hara turns it around and makes us feel it's us versus God. And ultimately, you have to make the right choice in life. So this is a story. The story of the snake is really a story about us and the choices that we make through the day, every day. Do we go with the voice that's telling us, "Oh, do what's easy, do what feels good"? Um, the reason it says that she eats it ultimately, it's an amazing thing. It says kitavahu le'einayim, because she had a physical lust, a desire for it. It was beautiful to the eyes. The nechmana eitz lahaskil, it was desirable for understanding. So when we do bad things, it's because we want to have an experience, an understanding. We also want the physical pleasure. So typically when we go off on the wrong path, it's based on a kind of hedonistic or desire to experience everything. And we're not supposed to experience everything. There's things that we're not supposed to experience in this world because it's not good for us. And I think everybody understands that there's things that you're not supposed to do because it's not good for you. But yet we have a hard time wrapping our head around that. This story is all about that, remembering that the snake is not your friend and that Hashem is, even though often we feel the opposite. We're convinced of the opposite.